This is...
Meet the ocean.
Are we recording?
I'm pretty sure we are.
A sailor, there's
through
the light.
this sea of Adelie
The
penguins.
oceans are the biggest carbon sink of all.
Check a mic check.
Welcome to another episode of Meet the Ocean. Today we are in Portland, Oregon in our podcast studio, and that is thanks to the Startup Radio Network and Mark Grimes. But today I have a very special guest with me, someone who has inspired me with her own creativity and love for the ocean. So how about you introduce yourself?
Well, hello everyone. My name is Mary Nagler, and I'm a career puppeteer.
A career puppeteer. I mean, not only does that rhyme, but it has so much robustness attached in there. What is a career puppeteer?
A career puppeteer is someone who's, I guess, dedicated their life to the art form of puppetry. I made my first puppet when I was 10 in a Girl Scout troop. We made papier-mâché heads back in the day when childhood was a little more dangerous. We made papier-mâché over a large light bulb, and then we broke the light bulb inside the paper and let all the glass fall out, hoping that all of it would. So, yeah, there were a few cut fingers, but then we had learned first aid, too, so it didn't matter. But I went on in college. I had an opportunity to make a Punch and Judy show for a college Renaissance fair, and my dad built me a little booth stage, and I grabbed my boyfriend, and I said, come on, let's go do Punch and Judy. And so I got the script. I was in college as an acting student, but I didn't get parts because I didn't schmooze the director, so I ended up frustrated because I only got tiny parts or no parts, and they knew I could sew, so they stuck me in the costume department, and I wanted to act. I wanted to be on stage. So when I got the opportunity to do Punch and Judy, I did it, and people came up afterwards and hey, do you do parties? Hey, could you come to my store opening? So it launched my little career, and I did Punch and Judy for many years till I met the Puppeteers of America, which is a national organization, and went to their festival and was exposed to shadow puppetry and tabletop puppetry and things I had never even imagined before because I was a little hand puppet person. So it just kind of launched me into all the different opportunities that puppetry has. And because I'm an actor who liked to make things, it was natural because you get to write the scripts, make the costumes, make the people, make the whole story happen. And then at the end of the day, they go in a suitcase and you keep the money. So you don't have to feed them. You just have to sew them up a little bit occasionally. So.
And, you did describe puppetry as an art form, but I think that's worth exploring because there is the art of imagining what the puppet will be, the art of creating that, of forming what it will be in a way that is not only enticing to the audience, but also durable, able to move and function and perform, time in and time out. And then you're talking, what size is it? Is it something that you can control with one hand? Does it take multiple people? So puppet is a word, but really it's an umbrella term for a variety of different things.
That's right. It's literally the animation of an inanimate object and in a way to make your story happen, to move the hearts and minds of people, essentially, to bring forth emotion, to teach something. I loved it because it involves engineering, painting, sculpting, all the different things that I like to do. It requires a certain amount of imagination just to not only make the character an imaginative character that never existed before, but also to have the imagination to make it work. So there's a lot of, if you go to any museum where they have puppets on display, they look a little shaggy sometimes because they've been worked and reworked until they move the way that they want them to do. I have one character who's a librarian named Mrs. Snit, and she has one wrist that's kind of loose, but I can make her go, come here, come on, and she can put it against her face, and she can do all these different things because she has this one weak wrist, but it's in how you manipulate that wrist to make it have all these different emotional things because she can, flop her hand down and go, no, and then she can do all these things, and it's just because it's a little loose in the wrist, and that was kind of a surprise, but I used it.
And you mentioned the emotional connection, but you also said using puppets to teach. And I think that's where you and I found a really nice overlap because I just got a message one day from a career puppeteer, and what made you reach out to me?
Well, I've been a puppeteer for a long time, and I've been telling stories like, the Reluctant Dragon and different things like that. But then when I went through college, I have a master's degree in puppetry from the University of Connecticut. And while I was there, just all this stuff about climate change and things were coming up. And I thought, I've been a children's entertainer my whole life, but now I think the children need to get a heads up about what's going on in the world. And not in a way that scares them, but in a way that educates them to do something about it. So I decided to do a show called Terran's Aquarium, which is about the freshwater situation in the world. And I think I reached out to you because at the same time I'm learning about all these things about freshwater, I'm also learning about things in the ocean and how much plastic is out there and how much it affects the just even the little polyester fibers going out of our washing machines is ending up in the bodies of fishes and then thus in the bodies of us. So there's so many things out there. It's just overwhelming sometimes. But I thought, well, let's just chunk off a piece. And some wise person told me that every single person on the planet, if they had a passion and acted on that passion, there would be less like trouble in the world. For instance, my thing is fresh water, so I'm trying to show people how incredibly important that is and how necessary, and it affects every aspect of our lives. And yet at the same time, so does the ocean, because if it dies, then we don't have the plankton and the diatoms making oxygen and all this stuff. So it's all connected. And so you have to there's just chunk off a piece and work on that one. So I chunked off fresh water, but I had this plastic idea, and I thought, I'm looking for somebody who's out there, working with the ocean. And somebody mentioned you to me, and I was like, well, I'll check him out. I'll find out what he's up to and what's going on with him and see if we can connect on a project or two.
When we first sat down, you were exempling the pieces in your show, Terran's Aquarium, and I, for our audience listening, I have to say the woman that I'm sharing the studio with, I would classify as a master.
Aww.
Because your puppets are incredible, and to combine that skill that you have, or the many skills you have, with the messaging, I think was very profound, and I'm sure it had a great effect on the audience, even though, unfortunately, if I'm remembering correctly, COVID sort of smacked you down and gave you only a limited run.
That's right. We opened 3 weeks before COVID did. And so our touring plans were scrambled and ceased. But yeah, I worked with a lot of important, when I moved, I went to the University of Connecticut. I was on the East Coast. And after I got recruited from college to the Puppet Heap, which is a company in New Jersey that makes the Muppets and takes care of the Muppets. And while I was there, I worked there for almost 2 years, and I made the current Beaker and the Swedish chef, who has since been retired because they don't last very long. But I learned so much from those people, and I was so honored to be in that company for the time that I was. And then the Great Recession happened, right, and everybody lost their jobs. So after a while, I worked for Rick Lyon, who is famous for making all the Avenue Q puppets, and I learned an immense amount from him. He's very particular and taught me so many things about durability and just how to fabricate things in a way that lasts. And because his puppets are out there doing, working night after night after night after night for years, and have to be refurbished and then put back in their boxes and off again. But I learned so much from him, and I worked for a number of other companies out there on the East Coast because there's quite a lot of concentration out there. And then I moved back to California for a while, and then came up here to Portland. But yeah, I've had some really good training along the way, and worked really hard to make my puppets good. Just a synopsis of Terran's Aquarium. Terran is a boy, a young man who's a college guy who just got out of college. And he's living in a little apartment, and he wakes up and there's no water in his house. He can't water his plant or flush a toilet or take a shower or anything, cook dinner. And so he freaks out. And it's done black theater style, so it's a black stage and all the puppeteers are in black. And so things can can move in and out magically through what's called a curtain of light, which is a light beam that goes across the front of the stage. So as soon as they go behind the beam, you can't see them, and when they go into the beam, you can. So I have these yellow hands that float in and out and bring him the phone so we can call the plumber and do all these funny, flush the toilet, do all these little funny things along the way. And the plumber is a magical plumber, of course, because it's a show for kids. And so the plumber comes with this magic pipe wrench, and he can't fix the problem because we made the problem, but he can teach us how to fix the problem. So he uses the magic pipe wrench to turn Terran into a fish and drops him into his aquarium, which is really dirty because he hasn't cleaned the filter. So he learns about filters, and then he gets turned into a cloud and learns about the water cycle, and then he gets turned into a rubber ducky and learns how water comes into the house, and then he gets turned into a little poop and goes through the wastewater treatment plant, getting ground and turned into sludge and all kinds of fun things. And it's all very visual, and it's an opportunity to show kids that when you turn on the faucet, it's not just coming out of nowhere in some kind of magical way. There's a whole infrastructure behind it. So at the end of the show, we say, hey, if you want to save the world, if you want to be a superhero, be an engineer, be a water treatment person, because it's so essential to every aspect of our lives. So it's a fun show, and it was well received on the 4 performances that it got. Oh, it pains me so much. But hopefully we'll get it back up again, and I'd like to take it across country and into science museums and children's museums. And
the messaging is spot on, teaching resource management to the youth, I think, is paramount in terms of importance. And that includes adults as well. So what a way to use your imagination to bring, education to what some might consider an obscure topic, but actually turns out to be about as necessary as anything else.
It's something we totally take for granted in our world because we have great infrastructure in our country. We can turn on the faucet and get not just cold water but hot water too. It's amazing. And we have a couple of songs in the show, like Everybody Goes Poo is one of our songs. And we have some other ones about the water cycle and so forth. But one of the things I wanted to bring out was just that we also networked with the local water treatment people. And we do like a little slideshow thing in our show also. And we showed the local people, all standing there in their working outfits, and we talked about the engineers and the scientists and all the people that make that whole system work. And the water treatment folks gave us all these little packets of things that we could give out to the kids in the audience. And one of them was a water, like a shower head that conserves water. And they had coloring books and, all these cool things. And so everybody went home with stuff in their hands, and it was incredibly gratifying to hear this little girl, probably about 8, say to her dad as they were going out of the theater, "Daddy, can we check for leaks when we get home?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, let's wait till it's daytime because now it's nighttime. Let's wait till tomorrow." But I was just like, yes. And so they got it. It's a lot of information that we throw at them in that, 50 minutes, but they got it.
Many of Meet the Ocean's listeners know me as a polar diver, educator for the ocean. I don't know how many know that I have a degree in playwriting and a lot of history and career in theater. So I am doubly fascinated with your work. And I do know that moment when you create a show, perform the show, and then there is that audience leaving the space moment where you get quiet and your ears are wide open and you are looking for, or maybe not looking for, but you're just opening yourself up to random comments that people might make as they're leaving the theater. And it sounds like you caught some joy in that moment. So congratulations.
Thanks. I got a lot of joy in those moments. It was awesome. But one of the things that was great that I actually got a Henson grant to do the show back in 2011, right around the time the Great Recession hit hard. And I actually had time because I was unemployed to make all the puppets. And I got an opportunity, an invitation from Jane Henson, who had me come to the do a show at their theater there. It's called it's the Patch. It's puppets at the Carriage House. They have a Carriage House theater there, and my show was kind of big. We had to go in sideways to their little theater space. But I had about 50 local puppeteers come and kind of give me a view of what they saw, because it was just mostly the magical transformations with the puppets and that kind of thing. And it was very gratifying, and they were very helpful. With that money, I was able to build all the puppets for the show.
I did see one of your creations in a photograph one time, and as an underwater photographer, it is the creature that I often seek out the most, and that's a Nudibrink. But the one you made was massive.
It's massive. Yeah, I made it for my friend Leapin' Louie, David Lichtenstein, and he rides around at fairs and things on it. He rides on it. It's mounted onto a large tricycle. It's a very challenging process to have the framework break down and going back into a box, so he can travel with it and that kind of thing. But yeah, we looked at, I guess, probably 40 or 50 Nudibranchs and came up with that particular one. It was very, very colorful, and of course he had to have lights in it and all kinds of things. But that was a very challenging project. Probably took me 6 months to make that one.
Oh, my goodness. And for those listening that don't know what a Nudibrink is, we're talking about a snail that uses a different strategy, so no shell. Instead of hiding, they kind of announce themselves with color. And there's about 3,000 different species, and the one you chose, I think, was like black, orange, and
yeah, it was bright blue and with orange trim and hot green, like neon colors of neon orange, neon green. You can't see its eyes. It's just got these like little flaps all over, and it's got giant green spots. And it was fun to try and make it look actually like the actual creature, without going into and they vary. So I was looking at probably 20 different variations of that particular species. And so I kind of morphed them all together, decided how many spots and all that. And it has a trim, but it scoots along, and he has reins on it like he's riding it like a horse. And he's kind of a Western character, so it just makes it totally goofy and fun.
I think this will be an impossible question, because anytime someone says, what's your favorite X, there's a lot of considerations. But is there a puppet that you've made that just sort of feels that you have the strongest connection with?
I have several of those, actually. My oldest puppet is a little turtle puppet named Toto the Turtle. And Toto the Turtle is paper mache. It's got a little paper mache shell. It's about half an inch thick now because somebody sat on it and cracked it and broke it, so I had to put it back together. And he's been painted probably 6 or 7 times to keep looking fresh. But Toto the Turtle's been in probably every show except my first Punch and Judy ones. And he's part of my pre-show, because when you go out in front of a room full of little kids, they're always squirrely and jumping around and being silly. And so Toto the Turtle kind of gets them to calm down and sit down and be in a state ready to see the show. And so Toto comes out, and the kids are making noise. So I go, "Hey guys, you got to be quiet." I actually went to a birthday party that had 40 children. It was after 5 o'clock, so they were all wiped out already. And I walked in, and at the time I was performing as a clown doing puppet shows, because I used to work for Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus as a clown back in the day. And so so I came into this room, and all these kids looked at me and started to cry. And I was like, oh, no. So I got out my turtle, and I was like, "Hey, everybody, hey, you got to be quiet. You're going to scare my turtle." And they were like, "What? Turtle?" And so I pull out this turtle, and I hold him in front of me, and I can put my hand inside of him and make his little legs move and his head move. And so I show them he's inside, and he's kind of scared. And we used to have turtles when I was a kid, and it was always kind of comical when they would pull their head back in and then come back out. So I have them sing a lullaby to him to kind of make him feel safe. And he finally comes out, and then they clap, and he goes back in. And then they're like, "Oh," and then he comes back out again, and I let all the kids pet him. And then I say, "Okay, now here's the rules." I say, "Okay, now I need everybody to stay sitting down, and I need you to not touch the puppets, and and enjoy the show." And so he's been my pre-show for so many hundreds of performances that he would be one of the ones that.
I think you and I play in the same arena, even though we use different methods, and that is to create the space in a room where wonder and imagination have all the room they need to sort of fill the minds of the people that we're trying to engage with. And I think that's powerful. It's also something that's not easily accessed because as adults, I think we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day, focus on bills, etc., schedules. But regardless of age, you have to allow for the mysteries. And I think you do that so well. And it's always a joy to interact with you because I always feel more buoyant after spending time with you.
I feel the same way. It's always been a charge to hang out with you and to talk about what we have a passion for. So many people, it's about what's for dinner and what's on TV, and to try and to actually make a difference. That's one of the things I got from college was that I've been an entertainer all this time, and now I want to make a difference. So I've taken what I do, what I have, what I want to bring forth, and I use my art form to do that. And it's rewarding. It's not always financially rewarding, but it is rewarding in a heart sense and in a sense of that, when you touch someone and they get it, or like somebody comes backstage afterwards and said, that was so moving. Thank you so much. It's very gratifying.
When I came over to your home and we had some lunch, you were exempling all these other puppets, and you had made this amazing fish that could articulate via this little wheel, and its fin was moving, and it had all this life, even though it was a simple, well, not so simple, but it was a...
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
It's a wood carving, but the way in which you carved it, the way in which you painted it, all of a sudden an inanimate object comes to life, and what is more magical than that?
I've had the great opportunity during COVID. It's been one of the great joys of, this time period, the last 2 years, is I've been taking a carving class from Bernto Grodnik, who's a master carver and a master puppeteer. He lives in Iceland, and he's been doing online classes, and I got the opportunity to be in his first class, and one of the second project we did was make this little fish, and I have an aquarium. I've always had an aquarium, and I made the fish that is my favorite aquarium fish. And then I made you an angelfish because you requested that, and so we have fish. And I made one for my brother who was a marine biologist in college, and it's been a joy. I'm making a number of different shows based on these puppets that I'm building in this class, and we're going all the way to making a full-blown, fully articulated marionette, and I'm making a self-portrait of myself as Mother Earth. So she's going to have moss and things on her. But anyway, it's just been a joy to work with him because he's an amazing human being.
There were 2 engineering masterpieces that you actually donated to Meet the Ocean. I spend a lot of time in the polar regions, and for a while there I was averaging about 3 months a year down in Antarctica. What's down there? Well, penguins, amongst many other creatures. So penguins have been a big focus of Meet the Ocean's outreach, and we go into schools, we go into children's hospitals, we bring virtual reality. I've invented so many things, but never considered a penguin puppet. And then Mary comes along and says, "Hey, I got these left over from a show. Are you interested?"
Oh yeah, the penguins. I worked for Sonoma State, and they did the magic flute. And there's one scene in the show by Mozart, who where the guys playing the magic flute, and all these animals come out of the woods work. They wanted an animal representing each continent, and they wanted animals that were on maybe the endangered list. And so we went down. I was sad actually to do the research on that and see how many are on the endangered species list. But so we had an African elephant for Africa, and we had different things. But I made two. You have to remind me the name of the puppet. I think the type of penguin that they are. I think it's king penguin. Yeah, king penguins. I made two penguins because you can't just have one penguin. Come on. I mean, every time you see a penguin, it's in a picture with another penguin. So I made two king penguins, and I tried to be accurate. So they have the stripe down the front and the orange in the front and around the eyes, and we made them so they could waddle out on stage. And there's a cute scene where he's playing the flute, and they both come up and, are looking up at him, and then they kind of get around his legs. And, when he gets sad, they get sad. And so all the other animals on stage are reacting, but those penguins were really, really, really popular. And at the end of the show, I overheard someone saying that they might need a bigger dumpster to put all the puppets in. And I was like, dumpster, no! So I squirreled them away, and they're still technically on the list of things at this university. So because I'm moving, I had a giant snake that was 25 feet long, and I had, a baby elephant and all these different puppets that are so big. And I thought, I just can't take them all. So I've been looking for homes, and I was so delighted to meet you because I don't just give my puppets off to anybody. I just want you to know that. So I met you, and I was so entranced by what a cool person you are and what you're doing that I thought, yeah, this would be a good home for the penguins. And I look for nonprofits to give them to. So.
Yeah, most recently, these fine birds, and I will say they are alarmingly accurate, and this is coming from a guy who spent a lot of time with penguins. You delivered them to me in Oregon, but most recently we took them to Las Vegas for an event called Penguins in the Desert.
Oh.
And I had a lot of eyebrows raised. Actually, someone on social media said, wildlife belongs in the wild, and I was like, don't worry. They're just puppets. Wait.
I'm sorry, just puppets?
Whoa, wait a second. They are magnificently adorned creations of wonder.
That look like penguins.
That look like penguins, yeah. And I got to say, for all of the things that we had at the event, the interaction with something that is lifelike has power. I mean, the kids were loving the virtual reality, and they were interacting, and they were drawing, and there was a film playing. So they got this full spectrum of Antarctic information. But I would say when I was surveying the room and seeing what had the most impact, a friend of mine who's a performer in Vegas, Stefan, he wore a tuxedo, head to toe, dressed to the nines, and he was the puppet operator with the penguins. And he is a man of joy and mystery himself, so he added his small touches. But it was one of my favorite parts, and I might be one of the rare people who actually got through the airport with some penguins in his suitcase and came out all right on the other side.
They're not that easy to pack because they have that big pole coming out the back of their head. But yeah.
There was some creative packing. It did involve a duffel bag. But I really thank you not only for your kindness to our nonprofit and for coming in today. The experience that you have, you have listed literally the biggest names in the industry. For those who aren't aware, it's incredible to see your lifelong dedication to this. This isn't a hobby. It is who you are, and passion over time, as I am finding, is not easy to maintain. Life comes at you, details come at you, but if you can maintain that creative fire, then you have a life that is full of meaning, and that is something that many strive and perhaps even never find. So regardless of circumstances, I am in awe of your person and your creative ability.
Oh, thank you so very much.
I want to kind of give you the stage, or the microphone, I should say. You are environmentally conscious. So, feel free to just take a moment and speak to our audience about your personal take on why we should care about our planet.
Right now, a lot of people are just quietly freaking out when they hear all this stuff about climate change and that kind of thing, and how the world's heating up. And for a lot of people, I think it looks like it's like a no-win scenario. That's one of the possibilities. But I personally, my dad taught me about nature. We did a lot of things in nature. My first show was called Little Things, and it was about my father taking me out into nature and learning things. I think it's really important that parents take their kids into the outside. They're so like stuck on their screens so much, and they're living like virtual lives instead of real lives. And I come from a generation where we didn't have all that, and even TV wasn't that interesting. So we ran around in parking lots and in fields of weeds, and learned about bees and grasshoppers and all kinds of things. And my first show was a trained grasshopper show that I did when I was about 9. But I think everybody needs to do something. And I think the first thing they can do is just know what they should do. And that's where we come in to kind of tell them things. But I think it's really important, like with water being so basic, we can't pollute it, and there's so much going into the water. So for me, it's like taking up the banner, it looks scary right now, but if we all just kind of catch hands and fight against it to bring the heat down, to save the forest. There's so much going on. There's so many good people out there. For me, it's just like a battle. And I'm on the side that's pushing back against the scary bit. People just need to be more aware. So for me, part of what I'm doing is just taking what I know how to do and using it to inform.
Well said. It is a battle. I think you and I are armed with our stories, one puppet, one podcast at a time, and the story gets told. Speaking of, you have an event coming up in Seattle in August.
Yes, because of COVID, we had to stand down Puppet Festival regional. For the Puppeteers of America, they do every other year. They'll do a national festival, which is great. They bring in people from other countries and puppeteers, and there's lots of performances and workshops and opportunities to learn more about our craft. And then in the alternate year, they have a regional, and almost all the nationals are on the East Coast because there's more of a concentration of people on the East Coast that are into this. And we had one in Seattle years ago that was wonderful, but we haven't had one on the West Coast for quite a long time. So the first week in August, we will be having a puppet festival, a regional puppet festival up in Seattle. And we have some great performers from the West Coast coming, and we have lots of really great workshops. And we're staying at the Seattle University in the dorms. And so if anyone's interested, they can find out about Puppeteers of America and go to the regional section, and that will lead you into the Northwest Puppet region. And we're doing the festival is called the Left Coast Puppet Love Fest. And I'm one of the co-directors, so I'm busy as a bee, but it's going to be wonderful. And we're hoping to fill it up. So,
is there a place online for people to see your work?
Yes, you can go to www.whirlsofwonder.com. That's WHORLS, not world. It's whirls. Because I have always loved mollusks. I'm like a mollusk enthusiast. I think if God signed his artwork, it would be a spiral. And because it's in every cell of our bodies, it's on all the wonderful mollusks. There's so many, and I have a huge, huge shell collection that celebrates the mollusk. But yeah, so it's called Whirls of Wonder. That's my show, my company. And everybody was like, oh, you're W. You should be at the bottom of the alphabet. You should make it something like Acme. And I'm like, no. So whirls, I've always thought that we have something in our brain that spins around and that activates our imagination. And so I wrote a little children's book about a whirl that's got stuck in a girl's head and says she has no imagination and she's very boring. But they finally knock it loose and she's able to come see life in color again and that sort of thing. So it's called Whirls of Wonder.
Excellent. Well, you heard all that information. If you want to check out more of Mary's career puppeteering, then go to whirlsofwonder.com. And thank you for coming into the studio and for all that you do for not only young minds, but for our planet.
Well, thank you very much. And you too, sir.
Well, like I said, one puppet, one podcast at a time.
This episode was produced by Paul North and Andrew Gettings, with sound designed by me, Kelsey Anderson. Have you been following Paul's adventures on our Instagram? If not, head on over to watch our fearless and funny podcast host join penguin parties, scout humpback whales, and admire all the shapes of ice in Antarctica. Meet the Ocean is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To keep doing what we're doing and hanging out with all of you, we humbly ask for donations to our efforts. Visit our website, meettheocean.org, to donate. That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time. And until then, may the salt water be with you.